Murray of Stanford, Maine, lays empty eggs. Oh, sad benighted hen. Oh, solitary plotter on the great yellow brick road of life. Oh, fellow mote in the great eye of the all-eternal, fellow sufferer in the vast panoply of existence. We take as tonight's text, how many of us are laying empty eggs? Unknowingly, unwittingly, quacking, clucking proudly over them, and then preparing the next. Solitary potter on the long road of existence. All encompassing. Yet how can it behooves one to stand hard and fast? Keep your eyes on the horizon. Always look up to the sun. Keep marching forward. Never giving in a solitary edge to the tempest. To the strong goes the race. He who shall maintain a constant ratio of empty head and the soul Incidentally, do you realize hey, just keep it all going there, Eddie. Don't, hold on, I'll give you the cue. Don't you realize what a tremendous, can't you just hear a newscaster doing this tonight? He's finished the story of the Middle East. He's finished the latest Cuban charges and countercharges. He's finished the latest discussion of what Congress is accusing the other half of Congress of doing in its sneaky way, as it always does, full of chicanery. The 1,001 senators are always accusing this man of that. 1,800 labor strikes about to break out. And then he says, and now, here is our editorial on the news. Tonight's editorial does not necessarily represent the views of the station nor the sponsor. Oh, by God, believe in all of it. For some strange reason, take it seriously. It's like the time this friend of mine sent me this little collection envelope. Hold it there, Ed. This collection envelope from this church he goes to. And it said in unmistakable ecclesiastical tones, each cog must mesh. Your church envelope is one cog in the wheel of the activities of your church. Every cog must mesh if the wheel is to whirl toward success. A member who cannot be depended on cuts down efficiency. Give regularly. Make your cog mesh each week. We must move on to success. I didn't quite figure that one out. I guess success means everybody successfully getting there in the great A train to heaven. Without a single passenger lost en route. I was tired of living on low pay, so I started reading the Wall Street Journal. Which reminds me, Rossini's melodic comic opera, The Barber of Seville, will be heard tomorrow on WORsville. Now available at your favorite better department stores, Early American Stamp Book Box, fashioned in early colonial style, but definitely designed to cope with the very up-to-the-minute problem to supply the answer to, where can I put those trading stamp books for safekeeping? Yes, a beautiful Early American Stamp Book Box is now available. Did I ever tell you about the aunt that I had who lived in Woodlawn, Illinois, and who kept her husband's ashes in a small urn on the mantelpiece of her fireplace? And once in a while, somebody would say, "That's Uncle Max's ashes there, aren't they?" And she would turn to them and say, "Yes, the louse." I'll tell you the truth. Yes, fulfillment comes early in life. Oh, no. Hate doesn't die easily. It dies much quicker than a lot of other things, but it doesn't die easily, as a matter of fact. You know, speaking of this vast panoply, this wild gallimaufry that we live in, are you hooked on news? I mean, really, do you? News. It's not being. It's to me, fiction is getting duller and duller. And seriously, I just can't get involved in reading fiction much. Fiction is getting duller and duller, and all the stuff that's going on all around everywhere is getting more and more, it's getting wilder by the moment. It's like watching a gigantic fireworks display, and they're starting to touch off the big stuff. You know? It is. It's truly getting more and more interesting. And every time you look around, you see another little thing just flickering gently there on the horizon. Do you know that you can now buy, in drug form, in Los Angeles, you can now buy instant exercise if your doctor prescribes it. Dr. Arthur Moss, Dr. Edward Dufy of the University of California at Los Angeles Medical School have found that a drug has the same effect on the heart, lungs, and blood vessels as exercise. You can take your exercise now in tablet or in shot form. Yes, of course, a lot of guys have been taking their exercise in shot form for a long time, but yes, indeed. I see a lot of things that are coming out as a result of these new experiments in chemicals. You know that there is a chemical change that takes place in your blood for every emotion that you feel. Are you aware of that? That means, oh yes. That means that they can, by reversing the process, produce the emotion by giving you the proper chemical. Now, there's many a writer out there who has run out of steam because he's not mad anymore. You realize what this could mean to you, writers, out there? How many of you writers have found that since you've moved uptown, you're not bugged? And you haven't sold a thing in a long time to the Evergreen Review. The old venom is gone. Those old fangs just aren't sharp anymore. Well, chemistry can do the trick. And how about those of you out there who find from time to time that your hate is waning? Nothing bugs a guy, really, nothing makes a pamphleteer sadder than to find that he is looking in the eye of his enemy with a modicum of compassion. How can you keep up the old steam? Well, chemistry, by George, better living is possible through chemistry. It's all the way down the line, you know. And I've thought from time to time, speaking of better living through chemistry, do you know that one of the most interesting little things that is available these days these are all the things that are going to be collected by some future Gibbon when he is writing about the downfall of something. I don't know what it is. I don't know. It can't be the downfall of Rome. I don't know whether it's a downfall or not, though, come to think. But, you know, something's always bugged me or bothered me a little bit, and that is that constantly people seem to have a sense of guilt about being alive, about being mankind. In fact, there's a little piece in the New Yorker, the current New Yorker, about that, where they talk about the fact that it's quite obvious now. Didn't it disappoint you to find out that it looks like there's not much more on Mars than a couple of little pieces of moss, maybe? And on Venus, forget it. You know, forget it, Dad. Well, the New Yorker has a little piece that tells about how the news has filtered down to us now that it doesn't look like there's much happening on Venus. In fact, it's 800 degrees there for the most part, so they really can't have much going on. And Mars, it looks like it's equally the same. Now, only in a different way, you see, not much. So the New Yorker's attitude was that at least there are some planets that do not have, and this is wildly paraphrased, that do not have the scourge of life on them. It's a fascinating attitude. That they are innocent of life. They're just sitting out there, big rock, and they're hot. And the only planet, apparently, that we know of in our solar system that's guilty of life is good old friendly rotten Earth. Well, I can't, you know, this is an insane attitude. I suppose if rocks had consciences, they would feel guilty about being rocks. I suspect that. I suspect that the same would be true of chipmunks. And yet, here we are, you know, we're sitting around, and let's face it, for 40,000 years, men have had wars, they've slugged each other in the mouth. Who is to say that war is bad? It's just part of what man is, you know? And I am not pro-war at all here, but there it is. And everything all around us, everything goes on. There are a lot of people who think sex is bad. There are a lot of people who think breathing deeply is bad. There are those who think getting fat is bad. You know, you can name anything, and there's a group of people organized who feel that it's rotten. And yet, it's an integral part of life itself, you see. It literally is. And you wonder what would happen if all the things that people have decided are bad were to be eliminated. I suspect all that would be left would be grass. And maybe not that, you know, there's a lot of anti-grass people around. You'd be surprised at how many people. Certainly there would be no starlings. Speaking of, you know, it's funny when you get talking about evil, you just can't help it. It's odd how things remind us. This is WOR AM and FM New York. Speaking of sneakiness, you got the thing warmed up in there? All righty.
Pardon me, but could you send your smoke signals a little further away? The smoke is beginning to bother me.
Sorry, but me got 'em, spread 'em news fast about Buick dealers trading powwow.
What's that all about?
Right now, Buick dealers offering best trades in many moons on beautiful new Buicks. So you get 'em Buick you want 'em, at price you want 'em.
But isn't a Buick out of my reach?
Research show 8 out of 10 new car buyers pay price of Buick, yet many end up with car with only low-price names. Buick has 6 different price ranges, so no need to end up with low-price names. You find them out low Buick prices at Buick dealers during heap big trading powwow.
Well, I guess I'd better go to this Buick trading powwow myself.
By the way, You want 'em cough drop?
Oh, thanks very much.
Yeah, there's a cacophony there. Speaking of cacophony, I think that's about as good a description of our world as any. Cacophony. That's a great word. It's not used very often, but nevertheless, there it is. Do you know that there are several radio stations, as a matter of fact, now, who look upon the news as their own province? Well, as a matter of fact, WOR in its own little way does that. It looks upon all the things that happen out there as part of the great vast showbiz of the world, you know, and it's their own province. And do you know that there are several radio stations? One that I heard recently has the greatest call sign that I've ever heard that demonstrates, in a sense, I'm talking about 20th century mid-eastern seaboard American man attitude towards the world in general. There is a radio station that has the following station break. You know, station breaks are interesting. Usually the smaller the station break, the bigger the station. And the wilder the station break, the longer the station break, you know, the lousier the station. You can generally that pretty well follows. It's just like the more you hear a film advertised, the more you know it is a real stinkeroo. I mean, it is really a clinker. And the more they use words like the finest motion picture achievement of our time, look out, stand back. It's one of the kind that bite, you know. Stand back. Oh, yeah. Well, that's just the way it is. There is a radio station, in fact, I know of at least 4 of them that use fundamentally the same station break. Wish I had an echo chamber here now. Let's say if WOR were to... Hello. Yeah, it's echo chambers are very necessary to many radio stations. All right, here we go. This is all right, give me the echo chamber. As soon as I give you the here. We'll pretend like the music has just finished. Eddie, music. Come on, bring it on there real fast. WOR, fundamental news is not copyrighted. For this reason, you may hear WOR fundamental news later on other stations. WOR time, fundamental WOR time is not copyrighted. You may hear WOR fundamental time on other stations later. WOR fundamental time is now 11:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. About a little more than food. Well, now, if you think I'm kidding, there are stations who are advertising now that the news really doesn't belong to them. However, the other stations that are putting it on later are secretly copying them. Well, now, that brings up all kinds of ideas and images. I've often had a secret desire to do a radio program with the kind of commercials that I would like to have on. How would you like old Shep to come on and be sponsored by, say, a whole series of commercials? I mean, you just couldn't help but listen to it. If, for example, I had commercials for, say, Never Fail Sneezing Powder. Yes? Wouldn't you like to be the hit of your party the next time and every time? Never Fail Sneezing Powder, money back guaranteed. And then the next one, of course, I would like to try exploding cigars. Wouldn't be bad. And then I know one called Doggy Doo. Yes, that wonderful little thing that causes all that excitement in your hostess's house. Just slip it into the coffee table and pow. Well, you just think about that for a minute. Then I could come on sponsored by. These are all legitimate products or so. How about Sneaky Pete, the after hot dog wine, which comes in 87 cents the 3-gallon container. Comes in a tin container with a handle, carrying handle. Would you like that one? Or you know, they advertise wine on the radio now, you know. Of course, yes. How about so long, Russ, I'll see you there. I've got an idea, too, for coming on and advertising things. Oh, you know that there are stations that advertise this kind of stuff? I once worked at a Midwestern radio station that advertised something called International Big Dough Uranium Stocks. That were, and it's a send for brochure. Says our shifty-eyed salesman will call, wearing yellow kid gloves, and you can recognize him by the collar that he wears, that velvet collar on his Chesterfield. He will be around with his ivory-headed cane shortly to divest you of your investment earnings. Well, we actually had this guy on the air. I would also like to come on. I think another good one would. How about this? Give me the echo chamber, Eddie. I think we'll try this. Art lovers, art students, 50 beautiful poses for art lovers, art students, Hollywood models. Hello, Test. Hello. All of you lovers of beauty out there. There's all kinds of things that we could do if we really wanted to turn it on you in the radio business. You know, speaking of radio, I don't think I have ever told the story of my first official day in radio. You know, no, I haven't. No, I did not, Eddie. No, I think that's a thing that secretly, subconsciously, like all good 20th century Freudian men, I have buried like a little chestnut out in the yard of my mind so that I can't find it, you see. Because like everybody else, I secretly have a sense of fantastic guilt for what I'm involved in. You can hardly find that's true. You can hardly find a guy working in any job or other, I don't care what it is, just because of what we are today, who doesn't feel somehow that he has let something down by being what he is. Many a doctor secretly feels a sense of guilt. You'd be surprised, because he did not become a great research scientist. And all he's doing is going around out there giving out penicillin, and sulfanilamide and wonder drugs, and that's all, and making big dough and driving Cadillacs. Oh, they feel terrible about it. They really do. Many a doctor. You'd be surprised at how many. They probably feel worse. Many doctors, I've met many of them myself, probably feel more guilt than the average guy who is writing commercials for plastic pickles on Madison Avenue. Because the doctor, at least at one point, had a higher image, you know what I mean? And so all the way down the line, guys have this sneaky, rotten thing. Many an actor, you'd be surprised, many an actor spends his time down in village joints getting crocked to the ears, and these are the current gods, and goddesses, actors, they are. Crocked to the ears because they realize that they're spending their entire life pretending they're somebody else, and somebody else who never existed. And they're getting cheered for it, Not a smidgen of it is real. So they're down there glugging it down and falling down, hitting their head on the wall, and it's terrible. The guilt is everywhere, and you'd be surprised at how many politicians feel it. Certainly, I know many a writer feels terrible guilt. And even though he might keep up a great front about the great truths that he's ladling out, he secretly knows that his knee hurts and he doesn't love anybody. Even though he's writing about love and understanding and sensitivity, he's about as sensitive as a warthog on Friday, and he knows it. So he's having problems, you see, and everywhere you find him. More guys are sensitive because of their guilt problems than because of being sensitive. Seriously, it's all up and down the line. So I know that I haven't told the story of my first day in radio, and should I tell you about that? What a unbelievably scary, just completely, don't worry about that, just a completely scary, I would say almost nightmarish, Kafka-ish situation. Oh boy, speaking of Kafka, one of the funniest unconscious humor things I've heard in years was a discussion of Kafka's The Trial that was held on this radio station by an early morning married couple. It was funnier than anything Abbott and Costello ever did by 14 miles, and it even beat out a large amount of the stuff that Laurel and Hardy pulled. I will admit that it was nosed out somewhat by some press conferences that I've heard congressmen give, but it was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Speaking of funny, we better get with the commercials here. We have Mandarin House, and if you're going to make the New York scene over the weekend, if you're coming into town, we would like to suggest a couple of very excellent restaurants, all run by Emily Crow, who is one of the most respected Oriental food restaurateurs in the entire country. As a matter of fact, her Mandarin House restaurants on 13th Street and on 2nd Avenue are recognized as two of the outstanding Mandarin restaurants in the country. Superb Mandarin food. If you've never tried it, this is Northern Chinese. If you prefer Cantonese food, she operates the fabled Great Shanghai, which is up on Broadway between 102nd and 103rd. The Great Shanghai, which is Cantonese and is a great hangout for the Columbia students and NYU students. However, I happen to dig particularly Mandarin food. And if you would like to try a superb Mandarin restaurant, that is replete with 12th and 13th century Chinese art objects, I would suggest the Mandarin House East on 2nd Avenue, just north of 57th Street. Okay? They're open over the weekend, and they have a barzy. Right? All right. Now, let's see. We also have a paper book gallery. They're open till midnight on the weekend, you say? 2 o'clock in the morning on the weekend. So if you're also making the village scene, I would most respectfully suggest that you drop into the paper book gallery, which is on 6th Avenue, just off of 8th Street in the village, 399-6. And they are still continuing with their wild record thing. If you are a listener, and if you drop into the paper book gallery, they have a gigantic rack of records of all kinds of... Do you know a guy wrote me all the way from Nova Scotia, and he said, "What, you mean to say that they have Lithuanian sing-along record? I want Lithuanian sing-along record. Yes, they do have Lithuanian sing-along records in stereo. So, you know, and they have the Lithuanian song lyrics in there, in Lith, or whatever it is that the language is. And they have roller skating records, 458 people roller skating to the Roses of Picardy down in the Toronto roller rink in stereo. It's wonderful. You can hear them going left and right and counterclockwise. Great. And for any record you buy down there at the paper book gallery, if you're a listener and if you identify yourself as such, they will give you any other record in the house free. The records only cost 97 cents or $1.97, 2 for 1. Okay? Enough. All right, now we're back in business. Do you want me to tell you about the story of my first day in radio and how it came about? People are constantly writing me this. Well, let me tell you, for any of you who, I hate to say this to you, but most people in the theater and in many aspects of show business, unless it happens to be a true case of a dynastic situation. In other words, if you're John Barrymore and your family has been in the theater for 100 years, the chances are you'll go in the theater. But most people I have known in the theater, most people I have known, have gotten into the theater almost accidentally. I don't want to, because we like to believe that most people in the theater are people who from the very beginning, like when they were 8, they were dedicated. They were having show, they were doing Greek drama in the backyard, you know, with 2 pins, and the mothers had come, all this jazz. Don't believe it. Most of the people got in accidentally, and someday when I write my book about this business, maybe I shouldn't, but I can tell you the names of a lot of top stars who today, people I've worked with from time to time, who today have conveniently forgotten that. Whenever they're asked questions on interview shows, you get the idea that the theater was in their blood, they're great artists, and they want the truth, and they want to communicate, and so on. Some of the people I've known have gotten in through the most insane. In fact, I know one top star, top male, highly regarded dramatic actor, both movies and the legitimate theater, who got into the theater in his mid-20s by answering an ad for a guy to do carpentry work. He had no more idea of going into the theater. What's all the trouble? We'll give it to you later, Eddie. Don't bother her during the show. Will got in through an ad that was in the newspaper. Now, today he doesn't say that, because that would be an awful thing to say, you know. People want to think that there's some kind of a divine thing that happens. An actor is called the way a priest is called, we'll say something like that. Oh yeah, people have that belief, you know, that many people have an attitude towards the theater that's almost tantamount to a religion. It is with many people. Well, it's a funny thing. Let me tell you about me, in case you're interested. I am, if you're not. I was by one little accident or the other, I found myself doing a little piece on a kids' radio program on a radio station in Chicago. Now, the reason I was doing this was because it had to do with athletics. And I was doing this thing on Saturday. And all I did was come in on Saturday. It had nothing to do with the radio station. I would come in looking around, big eyes, you know. And they would just take us into the studio, a bunch of high school kids. I didn't see any of the radio station, just the studio. They keep us in the front there, you know, where the visitors sit, and then they would take us in, and I would do my little thing, which was to read the scores of the football games and the basketball games of the day before in the high school leagues. And then I would be taken out, and everything looked just fantastic. It was like, like a visitor to Radio City or something. Just incredible. And I'm like, engineers back there, and of course, I was a ham. I was completely flabbergasted by this, and it was just like, if they took you to this, let's say, to a Broadway show, and they gave you a walk-on, and you not even a walk-on, you were in this big crowd, and you held a spear. Many a guy's life has been ruined by getting a job after school holding a spear at the Met Opera. Never forgot it. Standing there with a bearskin rug and wearing a tin helmet with horns and holding his plastic spear, and standing there, and Helen Travel is singing away. Oh boy. You can't go back to Queens after that, not really. Well, the summertime came. I guess I was reminded of this situation by the air tonight. It's March, As you can taste spring in the air. Well, let me tell you what happened. Awful thing. One day, as I was leaving the studio, along with all the other high school kids, the chorus, the kids that did the rotten drama, the high school gym teacher who came on and talked about the activities of the week, who was Nose, that guy, the whole crew, we were leaving, and boy, all of us were all excited. We'd been on the radio for a little minute and a half, when a man came along. A man was waiting outside of the studio for me. And he was a man who looked like, he had an odd look. He kind of looked like Boris Karloff. Yeah, very official man. And I came out, and he says, Gene Shepard? And I said, yes. He says, I am the manager of the radio station. This is the stuff of which dreams are made, And he says, would you care to step back into my office unless you're in a hurry, if you want to get home? No. Well, I get back in the guy's office. I figured, this is it. Yeah, I've done something terrible or something. I'd never even met this guy. And he said, I've been listening to you on the Saturday morning program, and I wonder, would you like to have a regular job here at the radio station doing radio programs? Would you like to do a radio program and do a regular job? Have a show here? It's fantastic. I mean, can you imagine? What are you going to do, So wow, woo. And I'm about 16. Woo, whoopee. Well, yeah. He said, well. And the man says, well, we're looking for a summer replacement man to come in and to do several programs and to do regular staff work. However, we want you specifically to do a teenage program. We'll work on that. He said, however, we'd like you to try to start out with the staff work right away. And this is Saturday, you see. He says, could you come in tonight at 5 o'clock? I said, what? I've never been behind stage. I've never been in the control room, I said, I don't know. Yes. Well, of course. I'll stay right here. It's about 11 in the morning. I said, I won't go. He says, well, no. He says, that's not necessary. You come back and come in at 5, and Tex will show you around. I said, Tex? Yes. Well, I'll tell you who Tex was. Tex was a famous local radio performer who was legendary, whom I had only heard, I just heard these people on the air. Tex was an ex-hillbilly singer who was doing all kinds of radio shows on this station, and apparently was also the head of the announcing department. I didn't know anything about that. Well, I just, Tex was going to show me around. That would be like, they call you off the street and they say, Larry Olivier will show you around the theater. We'd like you to start next week. We'd like you to do, we'll start you out with, how about Antonio in Merchant of Venice? We'll start you out on that one. He's playing, he'll show you, Larry will show you around. Well, I said, well, Tex, I go out on the street, and the high school kids are all waiting for the bus. And I get out there, and they're all standing around. I said, what happened, Shep? What happened? I said, I got a job. He offered me a job. I'm going to do a show. And of course, nobody believed it. Oh, come on, knock it off. This is insane. This was also when I must point out, in the days when radio was a fantastic deal, see? So I was going to have a show. Well, I got on the bus, and when I got home, my mother had this funny look on her face, and she said there was a telephone call from the radio station. I said, no, really? I figured they chickened out, right away. They chickened out. She says, yes, there's a phone call from the radio station. They want you to come in at 4:30 instead of 5. What's all this about? I said, I got a job, Ma. Well, of course, the house at home, they just thought that was nutty. They couldn't believe it at all. They could not believe it, that I was going to be on the radio and it was going to be me, doing the radio. I was, Well, that day, I immediately got back on the streetcar and went downtown and waited next door. I mean, till finally 4:30, and I go tearing into this place, and I go up the stairs, and it's Saturday. I didn't know anything about radio stations on Saturday. Well, I do now, of course. But radio stations on Saturday are like Yankee Stadium in mid-December at 3 in the morning. There ain't nothing shaking. Well, that's the way this radio station was, and nothing was going on. They had, they had a few network shows that are being taken by the, and I didn't know what to do. I sort of stand around there in the lobby waiting around, and a guy comes up to me and says, "What are you doing? What are you waiting for, kid?" I said, "Well, I'm supposed to meet Mr. Tex here, Mr. Tex." He said, "That's me." I said, "My name is Shep." He said, "Oh yeah, come on, kid." Well, we start going into the back, really into the back of the radio station. We take the long way back. We're the next thing I know, we're in master control, and there's an engineer sitting there eating the eternal sandwich that engineers are eating and reading the Eternal Allied catalog. Little did I realize that I was seeing something that would dog me the rest of my life. The glazed eye of the radio engineer who has not listened to a radio program since the fall of '03. And he's sitting there, the knobs, and just, "Hi, kid." "Huh, kid." And Tex says, "All right," he says, "Look, we got a newscast at 5, and there's a sportscast at 5:15. I want you to take those, kids. You can handle those, kid." I said, "What?" He said, yeah. Well, he says, "I'll show you how to, here's the newsroom back here. You tear your news off here. And Earl will tell you what to do." Earl was the engineer, and he's sitting in there, his old eyeballs hanging out half asleep. I says, Earl. And these were men. These were grown-up men, men. Well, Tex, it's now 4:45. We're walking around there. You see, they got a network show. And I look at Tex, and he's wearing a hat, the kind of hat that all the gangsters wear in the old late movies. He's wearing this hat, and he is 4 sheets to the wind. Tex is tanked. Well, I don't want to say, well, Mr. Tex, you're drunk, and please help me here. And Tex says, "Well, I'm going downtown. I think I'm going to pick up a drink, and I may or may not be back. You know what to do, kid. You just take over." Out he goes! I am in charge. There isn't another living soul in this radio station, and it's in Chicago. They're, listeners like. And so I go into the newsroom, and there it is. There's about 5 machines. I have never seen a news machine in my life. And he just said, I tear off your news, and I look, and there's all little X's and numbers and stuff. Once in a while, there's a thing that says repeat. Ding, 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 ding. A couple of little news notes, and something about happening in California about the taxes. And I'm standing back there, and I don't know what to do. And I go into Earl. I say, "Earl, what do I do?" He says, "Well, tear off the news." I don't care. I don't give a damn what you do. And he sits there with his feet up on the control. He doesn't care. He's got another union. He doesn't care for nothing. So I go in and I tear off all his stuff. It's now 1 minute to 5, and I go in and I says, "Where do I go?" He says, "Sit down in there." He sits down in there, and all of a sudden I hear, "Mutual, the Mutual Broadcasting System." He points at me. He says, "Make the break." I said, "What?" He throws the switch. "Tell him what the station is." I said, well, I couldn't remember what station. Over above the microphone, there's a number. I said, "This is WCO, and now the news." And I started to read the news. The newscast went on for over, hey, Eddie, the newscast went on for over 4 weeks. I'm in there sweating and screaming. The telephones are ringing. Everybody's saying, "Who's this idiot on here? What's going on?" And then I had to follow with a 15-minute newscast. I followed it with a 2-hour record show. I followed that with another 15-minute newscast. I followed that with the Washington commentary. And here I am today.